Today, we're going to be covering a single module, and that's volunteer parking, registration, and equipment enforcement. So again, I want to emphasize to all three of you, where I doubt if it's going to be a problem, but this is an optional task that we perform. You do not have to issue any citations. You may be with somebody who, a partner who does want to issue them, so that's fine, that's their option. You also have that option while you're out there to go ahead and issue citations. We ask you, I mean, overall, we need you to use common sense. And you're going to hear me preaching about safety again and some of our do's and don'ts based on those safety requirements, not on any legality or, you could, but shouldn't type of decision tree that we want you to go through as you're issuing these. Normally, these are ones we find ourselves, and there are violations that occasionally we get radio calls for to say they want us to go out and they had a complaint basically, and go out and take a look at the situation. And again, total discretion. It's up to you whether you cite or not. You have to determine it is a violation first and if you feel justified in doing so. The other thing I wanted to point out on that is the abatement team. Again, you've heard about them. They're back in full force. They're working Thursdays and I think it's Saturdays, might be Sundays. Okay. So they're out there doing their thing. They respond much as we do. They see things themselves, but usually they have a fairly long list of people who have called into a special telephone line for the PD saying that they have vehicles that are there. Sometimes it's homeless related. Usually it's that there's a car parked here. It's been there for months. It's got, leaves and dirt all over it. And they want somebody to come out and see if they can have it towed away. And the practice on that is that they go out, they see the vehicle, they actually take usually photographs of it. They go ahead and mark the tires in a certain way. They hang a big, literally it's a sign, very fluorescent, I forget what color, green or fluorescent color. And it basically says you have 72 hours to move the car before it can be towed, cited and towed. And then they go back out. They usually give it a full week, not just the 72 hours. I mean, on Sunday, they may go ahead then on Thursday and do it, but I think they give them almost a full week to give them plenty of time. If it hasn't been moved, then they go ahead and issue the citations. It's not only for the 72-hour violation, but they'll also tag it for any of the things we're going to be talking about today. And then they go ahead and get authorization to tow, and they go and initiate the towing. And their list can be quite large. During some of the coronavirus times when people were sitting at home more and looking out their windows, there was one week they had 50 call-ins that they tried to handle. So it's pretty crazy. There's a retired lieutenant, Joe Haiti, who runs the program, retired from Santa Cruz Police Department, and he runs the program, so they're under his direction, but they have now gotten more authority as time has gone on. And again, just like we do, we've proved ourselves. We do a really good job. If we make an error, fine, but we correct it rapidly. And we've been able now to gain more and more permission to do more and more things. So that's a trend that I want to continue. And hopefully, with the help of the three of you that are on the screen right now, we'll be able to help support that initiative. And we'll have just a heck of a lot more things that should interest you, particularly because I know you all want to look for a law enforcement career. Joyce will talk to you more. I don't know if it'll be next Tuesday or not. She's got some plans for those that want to go into law enforcement above and beyond kind of our regular curriculum and stuff. And she's putting together a whole bunch of stuff around that. So I'll leave all the surprises and things to her. But I think you'll be happily surprised, if you will, with the things that she's got in the works. Okay, so back to our topic for the day with all that preamble. It starts off on the top. I just talked again about this as an option, and I can't stress that enough. Most people do write them. There are a select few that don't, and that's fine. There's no judgment on anybody's part as far as your willingness to do this. Okay, we have the right to go ahead and cite for select California Vehicle Codes sections, as well as City of Santa Cruz ordinances. And what you'll find here is almost 99% of what we're going to do is actually California Vehicle Code laws. There's a few as far as painted curves are concerned. The major one, red, though, you have a choice between CVC section, CVC standing for California Vehicle Code, the CVC section, or a Muni code. But other than that, because much of the municipal code is dealing with parking meters and stuff like that, which we don't handle. And you'll see why in a few minutes. But anyway, so you'll be seeing the ones that we can cite for. There's a lot more we can cite for. There's going to be a cheat sheet that I'll be giving you when we have the sit down. It's called a cheat sheet. It basically has the just a very thin definition of what the violation is for, and then the actual code number, and whether it's a Muni code or California Vehicle Code. And you'll get these little sheets, and you can just put little dots next to the ones that you want to, kind of have handy. But anyway, we'll save that till when you physically have a citation form in front of you and filling it out. And we sort of covered the next section in here, which dealt basically with what the team that goes out and handles the abatement is concerned with. This is another one where the police department was being asked to enforce all of these code sections, and the officers, because they're so time consuming, that they were looking for a way that they could still get an answer to these problems of people that are doing things illegal out there, and yet not have to do them through the police department, police officers per se. And that's where it finally fell over to us. Yes, we would give you the authority to sign or write these tickets and enforce those particular violations. So that was kind of the history on it when we first started. Then the next thing that happened is that people started citing for a lot of different things, and some of those involve the primary duties of what is called the Santa Cruz City's Office for Parking Enforcement. That's an entity that works out of the, don't know if they fall under the Public Works Department, but they're under the city government, and they're separate from the police department. These are the individuals who run the various all of the parking lots, both the ones we talked about as just ground level, and the ones we talked about that are multi-story. So they're in charge of all of those parking garages. They also are in control of the parking control enforcement individuals that are out there riding around on their three-wheel kind of white scooters, if you will, or a little piece of equipment there. They have citywide jurisdiction, but they focus most of their efforts, I'm going to say all, but most of their efforts on the downtown district. So that's where they're there. They mostly focus on meter violations. They do occasionally write for some of these other violations, but I've seen them drive right by them and not do it. So there are certain areas, the downtown, that we're kind of leaving open to them. And anyway, so the conflict here, excuse me, one more thing, you'll be seeing this when you go out on for your patrol, but the parking control office is located at the Locust Street Garage. That's in the downtown area. It's the really tall, almost 4-story one. And there's a group of windows that face Locust Street, and behind each of the 4 or 5 windows that are there sits one of their employees, and they handle everything from explaining violations to people. They take payments for the violations. They take they give them applications for wanting to have the citation dismissed, grievance, if you will, or want to have a hearing on it. So they take care of all of that. And they're open. Basically, it's about an 8 to 5 situation. It changed during coronavirus. I believe they're up to about those same hours, but it's an 8 to 5, maybe 9 to 4. situation on Mondays through Fridays. They're definitely not open on weekends. And there'll always be some group of people sitting out there, and the manager or supervisors for all of those teams and all of the lots also is in that building, and hopefully I'll get a chance to introduce you to her. She's really great. We work closely with them. But anyway, because of some of the conflicts that were happening, there was a lot of back and forth because they thought we were, or they did, some of the volunteers were starting to write for parking meter violations because they would see a red, a little red flag on the parking meter and says, it's expired. So I can write you for an expired meter. And then it was pointed out to us that many of the meters now have all gone to computerization. So people can pay, they can pay for their parking through still the old method of shoving a whole lot of coins into it, or they can use a credit card, or they can buy a parking card, and they can do that through all of these other media devices that we've got. The parking control officers, if you will, the ones that are in those scooters, they have a software program that they use on their own private cell phones because they don't have, believe it or not, they don't have walkie-talkies like we do. They don't work through communications, which to me is a little scary. But anyway, that's their situation. And they have cell phones with this app on it. When they hit the end of a street, they go ahead and hit that location, and it literally shows every meter on the street and its current situation. So it says, I got 6 minutes left, 8 minutes left, or whatever. They don't even have to spend time looking at anything other than they're all numbered. All these meters are numbered. They only have to look at those that are showing have expired or within a minute or two will expire before they hit the trail. So it makes it real simple for them, and we do not have access to that. So that was one of the first issues. The other thing is they're, just like with the police department, I think I explained this during our first meeting, there's always been the worry or the concern that we're taking jobs away. We were taking jobs away from the rangers. We were taking jobs away from the CSOs, maybe even from the police officers. They could have less police officers on the street because we're now handling all these other calls that used to take them a good portion of their shifts. None of that could be further from the truth. That was never the intent, and that's never happened. So we are there to augment, but we are definitely not there to take jobs away. But this was an honest concern of the parking control group and understood. So senior people, including the chief, got all involved in this. And we finally ended up having a massive meeting down at the, it was actually at the Civic Auditorium, if I remember correctly. I think it was in the side room. But we had this huge meeting with almost all of their staff and all of the volunteers and the volunteer staff and the chief and a couple of I think one of the deputy chiefs was there also to sort this whole thing out. So it came out finally with a resolution of who can do what, when and where and why. And that actually is posted on your, or the crux of it, I guess I should say, is actually put into your training guide here. And what it said was that this is literally a pace and cut. City of Santa Cruz Parking Enforcement has primary responsibility for handling parking violations throughout the city. This is accomplished by their staff of parking enforcement personnel. The police department collaborates with them on parking and vehicle code enforcement. The following is a list of areas of responsibilities for volunteers that will assist them in this effort. So in essence, don't step on their toes. So we're not stepping on their toes. We will enforce or have the ability to enforce / assist in parking violations outside of the downtown district as needed. Now the downtown district, when you get out there and start walking, consists mainly of Pacific Avenue. That's the main drag through town, which is, for all intents and purposes, you could almost talk that a mall area or a walk area. They still have traffic that comes up through part of it. One of the blocks have been blocked off from traffic because of the fact that the restaurants have push their seating out into the street area. There's another place where you can only go one way down a little bit of Pacific and then they force you to turn off. So it's kind of a jumble down there, but it's like it's been talked about doing a pedestrian mall down there forever. It still has parking spaces on it through a good portion of it. And Pacific Avenue, probably between, let's say, where the clock tower is at one end and all the way down to where it kind of joins Front Street and heads off towards the beach. So the bottom end of Pacific. So on the left and the right side of Pacific, on the right side, if you're facing the bell tower, the clock tower, I shouldn't say bell tower, the clock tower. On the right-hand side, one street over is Front Street. Front Street, then, if you go further over, you're walking the levees, which is another place that you can also literally do your walking patrols. We used to do a lot more of it, but this was a primary responsibility of the rangers. And so we stopped doing that a bit because we were more than double covering each other. But now with the rangers disappearing as of the 23rd, we could start talking about having to do the levies again. But anyway, for parking enforcement, Front Street is also considered to be central district. And after the levy, you get your feet wet if you try to do anything. So over on anything on the other side of the two bridges there, the Water Street Bridge or the Soquel Bridge, that's all ours. That's just east side. If you're looking down Pacific again and you look to the left side, then you have Cedar Street. Cedar Street is basically parallel to the other two, to Front Street and Pacific. It runs up quite a ways and then it kind of takes a dive. You can go up to the left on there and get back onto Bay Street, or it takes a dive off to the right and kind of intersects over with Water and the clock tower again. So it kind of curves around and it all kind of funnels into that area. So we also consider Cedar Street to be part of the downtown area, basically from kind of the one end of it to the other end. Finally, it gets a little iffy, plus or minus. The next street over is Center. That's where the police department is located. It also, runs all the way up and then hits the traffic circle towards the beach side of the stretch of it. The other way it goes down and kind of blends into that whole mess down at the end where they all kind of converge. So that's Center. We have that one if we want it. There one more street over is Washington. It's one that is the back end of a park that's close to us. I think some of you are aware of Loudon Center, which is literally just across the street, the cross street to the police department. So that's there. In the back of it, there's this pretty decent sized park. Basically, it's a kids park. And for a while there, the homeless were kind of taking it over. So the PD actually hired I think it was First Alarm security for the working hours out there. And they just patrolled the park and kind of served that responsibility. And it kind of cleaned it up a bit. But then the homeless spread over onto the sidewalk, blocked the sidewalk. There were tons of complaints. So that got handled. But anyway, Washington Street there is also has some parking. And it's kind of a plus minus. Anything beyond that is called West Side, and that's all ours. So I mention that because for most part, they don't have meters on at least Center Street. It's not metered. So like I said, it's not really one of the ones that you have to kind of worry about if you see a violation out there. Most of the things we do are not going to be parking violations per se. I'll go through what type of parking violations we do. The majority of what you're going to be looking at are equipment violations and registration violations. Okay, so anything out of the downtown district is all ours, both for parking violations as well as for equipment and registration. You'll find that the parking enforcement personnel, as I mentioned before, I haven't noticed them doing a whole lot of registration violations or equipment violations. So we have basically our citation forms and that our books are different than what the meter people do. They do everything electronically. They actually crank out a electronic copy in their vehicles there, and then they hang those on their windshield now with an envelope that goes back. But it doesn't look like our citations anymore. So we've got outside the downtown district, vehicle code violations, like I said, citywide. So that means that municipal code sections, we can enforce, but you're going to find that most of them aren't applicable to us. Finally, the vehicle abatement program is citywide, and that includes the downtown streets. So we 100% control that. On the next one, disabled parking. Okay, that's, if you're all aware of that one, that's the handicap parking with the blue signs and the blue striping on the street. We're going to cover that pretty heavily because that's a big violation, meaning it costs the person a huge amount of money, and we got to get it right when you hand one of them out. But anyway, we have that citywide to an extent. The extent is that if it's on the street, we can do it. There are a couple places downtown where they have blue zones painted on the curbs. There's one on Front Street, and I'm trying to remember where the other one is. So those are handicap spots. Kind of a little weird to see them there. But they're similar to like a red zone. There's a blue curb, and then they have the sign up there saying disabled parking only. And they also have, obviously, these spots in both the city lots that are on the flat land as well as the multi-story buildings. We can cite them for violations on any of the flat lots. If I haven't done that I haven't been out shadowing with you. When we go out, I'm going to give you a map of where all of the parking garages are in Santa Cruz, the downtown area, and I will point to you which ones are the flat ones. So we can cite for there. We will not cite for them in the multi-story garages. Okay, that's back to their home turf. Okay. Okay, what we still want, they want us to do is they do not want us not to walk through the city garages. Theoretically, we could cite for vehicle equipment and registration violations in the city lots. We'll be talking a lot about private property and public property, and where you can't cite on private property, you have to cite on public property. Yes, Connie. Can you, you'll have to unmute her. I think, am I in control yet?
I was just saying bye to Margie.
You're in control, and I'm heading out. So
take care. Okay.
You guys have a great day.
Super.
Bye, Margie. Thank you.
Cheers. So, Connie, you had a question.
Oh, no, I was just saying bye to Margie.
Oh, okay.
I was just waving at her.
All right. Yeah, I saw your arm and I thought you had a question. So if you got a question, do this and I will try my best to unmute you, and you can also unmute yourself. I left all that options for you. So I'm only partially trained. Let me see, where were we? We could cite for registration violations, equipment violations in the garages, the multi-story ones. I've chosen personally just not to get into that with them. So just kind of leave the garages as is and do what they asked us to do, which is that next paragraph there, which is assist with illegal or negative behaviors occurring within the city lots and garages, eyes and ears, reporting parking related issues occurring within the lots or the garages to the that office I mentioned there at the beginning, at the their office over there on Locust. I also have put in here their telephone number, and I don't think it is in our little black books. So when you get your books, this will be another one you're going to want to add to that, to say if you've got any questions or issues, that's the one you can call, give your badge number, and then they're there to take you as first priority. So you can call them and ask them. What I've done in that regard was in the parking garages, we used to walk those garages, meaning we'd go every floor. And what we were looking for are people that were hanging out, potentially breaking into the cars. It's been a very big issue. There was one garage, and I think over a six or 8 month period, they had 200 and some odd break-ins. I mean, it was huge. But anyway, just to say that we walk the garages, we're looking for people that are kind of doing that. There's some tricks to the trade that I'll be teaching you when you go out of kind of how to do it. So you'll hear me saying this 1,000 times so you see them before they see you. They hang out at the top story on these things, do drug deals because they can hang over the edges and they can see you coming. People will eat lunch in there. They're not supposed to, but we'll talk about that. They're not supposed to loiter in the garage. There's a city ordinance that says they cannot be in the garage for more than 15 minutes, either in the vehicle or out of the vehicle, which is, we can, in fact, enforce, if you will. We can tell them you can't be here. And, if they're non-compliant, then we call for an officer and they become compliant. Anyway, I found keys found on the ground. I'll take them down to the park office or walk it over to them and say, found these, and they're super happy. I found cars up there where it's obvious that people are living in them, because once they're in the garage, they don't have to pay a dime until they leave the garage. So what happens is that they can camp out up there. I've seen those in the past, so I'll go down, I take the license and the plate number down, tell them which floor it's on, go down, and they're incredibly happy about that. Then they can arrange to have them towed. So all is good. I think that kind of covers it. So we're looking for violations. We also, just to say with the garages, let you know about this because it'll be something that may come up. It was something that happened before you guys came on board. Last November, the chief had an initiative that he wanted to try out an enforcement practice to find out if it could have a significant effect on the number of petty thefts out of vehicles. And actually it would be, if you remember back about the reports we can take, it would be actually a vehicle burglary because they had to force their ways in. Remember, if it's not a force to get into the car, in essence, the door was left open, that becomes just a grand or petty theft of anything they remove if they don't take the car. If they smash their way in, then it becomes, or in some other ways, jimmied the lock, the old cars that actually had key locks on them. Then that becomes a auto burglary and becomes a felony. But anyway, just to say that there was a ton of these. So what the chief wanted to do is to find out if we actually patrolled the lots in a way where we went to every single car, we looked through the windows and determined whether there was anything of significant value. And for this thing, because it was a lot of cases, these are people who are just drug addicted. And so if they get about 10, 15 bucks, they can buy a small bundle of methamphetamine or even a small packet of heroin. And so even something that small in value would cause them to break in. So what we did is we literally went car to car. We had little flyers printed that said, be vigilant. It's the holiday season. Anything left in the car could get stolen. So from that point of view, it's please, do one or two things. One of them is I noticed whatever, and you could actually put that down on the form, or you say your car looks good, nothing of value. Please keep it that way, kind of deal. And he wanted to do a statistical study, which he actually did, and he wanted to actually put that into a major police journal saying that it worked. So we selected one garage. It happened to be the Soquel Street garage. That's the one near the bridge that goes over the street. And we did not do the one that's the Locust Street derived, which didn't leave the parking people real happy, because that's one of the ones that they had break-ins. But the two of them had about equal numbers of break-ins over that period of time. So we did that every day, at least once and sometimes twice a day, covering 100% of the garage. We'd send out teams of 6 volunteers, and they would put those signage up. It had an excellent response, and we did that all the way through February. And what happened is that the statistics were beyond clear. It significantly, way in the heck down in the basement, dropped the number of break-ins we were seeing. So whether we're going to do that, it doesn't look like we're going to do it again this Christmas season. At least I haven't heard about it, but it was really a nice initiative. But because of that, the people in the garages said, this is fantastic, do that. And for you to walk the patrols and keep walking through the garages, please keep that up. So that's kind of our situation with them, to give you a feel. We're all on the same team, and I don't think you're going to get any pushback from them out there, because you're doing your job. Okay, so that was it. And if we do see a parking meter problem, you'll get this. I've gotten it a dozen times. People will come and say, the meter's not working. How do I do this? How many minutes does it give me? you can answer some of the questions, you can't answer others, particularly if they say the meter's broken. If it truly is broken, then we say, fine, we'll call that in for you. We actually call the number that's listed here, that second number, and tell them that they've got a meter on the fritz. You know, it's a problem meter at this certain location. So, and that number can also be, you know, given out to the public to say, fine, you can call this number here. And actually, it's the same number, I'm sorry. But anyway, you can call that number and report it yourself if you want to, or ask them what you should do. Because I can't answer some of the questions about what if I have this credit card and it wouldn't accept the credit card. You hear all these 5-mile long stories about why it's not working for me. So you just fine, I understood your thing. Here's the number, call them. Look at what your meter number is. Every meter has a number. It's posted inside the little window there. Write down your meter number so that they know which one you're talking about. You can call them and report your problem. Okay. Next one. Besides, I think we covered that one. Yeah. That's the one where we will not enforce regulations in the downtown district. So that's it. But certainly in the downtown district, like I said, if you do see an equipment violation, plus or minus, if you want our registration, want to go ahead and do it for that violation. Okay, so that's it. And just that the parking services will still continue to enforce parking regulations within the city limits. Issuing a citation. All right. Just mentions that you're going to do that in-person training next week. If you decide you really want to do the vehicle abatement program, we're getting more and more interest in that, then that's a separate training. I think I mentioned that before, to join that team. And they do it, like I say, on Thursdays and Sundays. Okay. Okay, and we were saying that this this module covers both the vehicle code and the muni codes. And next, the big one is a big one. We are not going to become confrontational on these. I think you've all probably seen or heard about folks that come back when a citation's being issued, and in some cities in that, the parking control, whoever's issuing the ticket, say, well, you're in violation, here's your ticket, and hand it to them. For the volunteers, we will not get involved in a altercation with these individuals. And you'll see the rules and the regs then support that idea. So as just an overriding thing, we will never become confrontational. And therefore, when writing the ticket, we ask to do so with an unoccupied vehicle. And that means there's not only not a driver in there, but there are no other people sitting in the car, you know, waiting for the driver to return. So the vehicle has to be empty, unoccupied. And if the passenger, or if the owner or even a passenger returns to the vehicle, you will go ahead and inform them of what the violation was and then void the ticket, void the citation. They'll get no copies of it. We'll cover that in a minute on what you do with those. You'll get even more hands-on experience with that when we're doing the in-person. So you'll void the ticket, you'll do the procedure that's required to do that, and you'll simply say, you know, this is what it's for, and then tell them they really need to correct that violation. If they're out of registration or something else, you really need to get this collected, because for a vehicle equipment violation, you know, any police officer can stop you on the street for doing this. So it's also a reason to pull you over. Okay. So when a citation can be issued, and it's basically for those things that cause public problems, incurs on unsafe vehicles. And the first thing you have to do when you're doing a citation is verify the fact that the citation is on our approved list, if you will, and that it's something currently observable by you. It sounds kind of silly, but you have to personally observe it. You have to be able to testify to that yes, I saw this happen, and be confident that your answer is true and correct. We are honest and correct to the nth degree here, that there's no reason and there's no excuse for ever telling somebody that's not something that's not true, or trying to push our authority or anything like that. That would be grounds to say adios. So we're very, very cautious about that. And This is just an emphasis again, we cannot write citations for expired parking meters or for unregistered vehicles without the front and rear license plate. I'll explain that to you in a minute, since these violations require specialized systems to be able to check it. The abatement team has permission, I think I mentioned this before, to go ahead and run license plates or VIN numbers, vehicle identification numbers, VIN. So a VIN number is the only thing that you'd be able to see, possibly see, if in fact they have no front or rear license plate. So that's the only way to identify who owns this vehicle. And because of that, you have to visualize where the VIN is. Now, in almost all of the cars, there are exceptions. In the upper left-hand portion of the windshield, if you will, I'm trying to think of the name of the dashboard, basically, the top of the dashboard. If you look through the window, right in the very corner there, they will have a recessed area in some cases. Sometimes it's just basically riveted. They have rivets on it. Is a small metal plate with the vehicle identification number, with the VIN number there, okay? Well and good, but we don't have the ability to go ahead and run that VIN to find out what the license plate number is to put down on the citation blank. The citation blank just simply asks for the last 4 digits if visible. What people do to avoid that is they simply stick something up in the windshield that covers it. So a piece of paper, you name it, it's covered. So you cannot even read the VIN number. They sometimes, to some degree, sort of black them out. I don't know how they do it, but on the windshield or something, it's just, you can't read it. It looks like a black hole. And even with a flashlight, again, remember your cell phone can be used as a flashlight, or if you carry one, to try to get down and see what the VIN number is, because it'd be good to at least put the 4 digits down, the last 4 digits, which is asked for on the citation blank. But anyhow, they'll cover it up in that. So we've just said, fine, they're going to get away with it, at least until they're out there, until the abatement team comes, or until they get stopped by a police officer for having no license plate whatsoever. So those are the times that we will not write a citation. So we're not doing it for expired meters, and we don't do it for vehicles that don't have a front or rear license plate. And let's see. So any questions so far? I know I'm throwing a lot at you again. Everybody good? All right. Citation procedures. It's a 2-member function again with your partner. One is, actually physically writing the citation. The other one is sort of helping out, but also, more importantly, looking for any possible individual who may be approaching the car and could become a safety issue. It's not uncommon for a person who returns to the car where you're writing the citation to either be one of 2 conditions, either incredibly apologetic or just feisty as hell, saying, "What are you doing? Why are you doing that? No, I didn't," or whatever. So that was another reason why we don't say, we're not going to get involved with that. Here's what I was doing. We're voiding the citation. Please get it corrected. So that's our approach to it. But it is two-person function. And the second, your backup, if you will, needs to be protecting all your flanks. So they're looking for somebody approaching. And the second they see that, they need to notify you, hey, I think there's somebody walking up to the car. So it gets your attention to them. Your safety is primary. You need to focus on them, not the citation anymore. And then once the citation is completed, the second volunteer should review it as a second set of eyes. So you just quickly hand it to your second one and just say, what did I miss here? Or did I say something wrong? Because again, if you don't write these very often, I've had people returning to our citation classes when I throw them. We may even get some next week who say, I haven't written one for 6 months and I forgot whether I was supposed to do this with them, because there's some little tricky things you got to do with any of these that require an officer to sign off that it's been corrected. It's a dual system. If they take care of it, it's a very low fine. If they don't take care of it, it's a much larger fine. That has to be explained on the citation because it's not. There's no way that the person would understand that. So we have to write that in. Okay. So the second one reviews it, make sure it's the license plate number is there, that it's legible. Some of these things you can't believe. I've tried to see which street is that on? You know, I just can't read your writing. So after that is done, if an error is made and you still have two copies, or you have both copies of the citation, you'll find that one copy goes with an envelope that's attached to the copy onto the windshield of the vehicle. The other one goes back to the police department with you, and we have a special basket. We put them in, and I'll show you where that is. And that's where you deposit them at the end of your shift. But if it needs correction, if you have all the copies, you simply cross out the incorrect information. You don't have to void it and enter the correct information. Okay, so that's just the replicate. Once you issue a citation, meaning that all copies are no longer in your possession, if you will, no further changes can be made. Okay, so you're done. At that point, you got to live with what happened there. And there is a citation correction form that's available in the records division that you can go in and make the corrections at that time. In essence, that would be then attached to the citation you're turning in to say you need to make this correct. Hopefully that's not going to happen to you, but it can. It still leaves the citation is valid, but it puts the notice in there. I'll be talking to you later in here on how these are reviewed and what process the citizen go through to basically deny the citation or rebut it. And so that would then be included in the review of your citation before it would get turned back to you to say, yeah, we've got an issue here, I need more information, or you need to kind of state what happened. All right. The white copy you'll see is the one that goes back to the police department. There'll be no copy left in your citation book. So once you've turned it in, it's gone. So if you want to keep a record of it, which might not be a bad idea, then take a photograph of it, or right next to where you turn them in, there's a photocopy machine and you can copy it yourself. But once you stick it in, it's not in the book anymore, it's gone. The only place it exists is in your memory. So the pink copy and the attached envelope, Connie, if you didn't hear that one, goes under the windshield wiper blade. Usually I turn it so that the citation, the pink copy, faces the driver, and there's just a white back of the envelope that sticks out onto the street. Other people will put do it the reverse, but there's no set way of doing it. I just prefer doing it that way. Because I've had that question asked, what direction should it face? After issuing the citation, it's best to drive, particularly if you issue 2 or 3 to this car, because remember, only 1 violation per citation. You can't put all 3 of the violations onto 1 citation. It's going to take 3 different citations from it. It said it's best to drive from a different location and then make your journal entry because you'd be putting this in that little black book again, cited on such a date and whatever information you want to put down on that. If you took a photograph of it too, then that's another record that you're going to have to keep. And the reason for that is you just don't want to hang around after you write the citation. If the person comes back later, then you're sitting back, you're having to pick the one out even of the windshield if you're not able to escape early enough, and you got to stick the white copy on top of it and write void on it, and take it back and stick it in all copies into the box. You can't throw these copies away. They're all numbered. You got to put them into the box so that they know it's been voided. But anyway, it's a situation where you just don't want to hang around and get yourself entrapped in that. So take off, go write your notes somewhere else, and then come back and they can be as upset as they're going to be. I'm going to check my time here, see how we're doing. We're doing okay. The last thing, I guess we've gone through that one. Okay, any questions on that? Everybody okay with it? It'll really help when you have the in-person. It'll really help when you get on the street and you write your first one or get to at least, participate in that. When you will not be given the citation books until you actually have your badge number issued, which doesn't occur until after you've completed your FTO training. But if you're out there and you're watching one of the other volunteers, I'll do one for each of you while you're with me. When you issue it, you'll have it firsthand on it. You'll even have you maybe fill it in and I'll sign it. So we'll have you practice that. But anyway, okay, yes. Okay, so if you've issued the citation, you've left the vehicle, and later you find out that you written it in error. I'm trying to think of a reason why that might have happened. Maybe somebody mentions to you that, I don't know. I'm not sure. But if for some reason, I don't know how this would happen, but if for some reason you decide later, I shouldn't have given that person a citation, that's fine. It's just that you got to do a lengthy process here, if you will. You have to write a departmental memorandum, so you have to pull up the memorandum sheet to the parking office per se. This is after it's gone beyond the basket. If it's still in the basket, then you could write a correction on it if you do. But if it's already gone over, been picked up, taken over to the parking office, then you have to write this memorandum to them. You're asking them to dismiss the citation because they're the ones that review all of these. And actually, they're the ones that have a, call it a committee, that hearing committee, where a person can write them and even go in if necessary and say why they didn't deserve the citation. The citation was done in error, et cetera. And they actually serve as kind of a judge, if you will. It's an administrative procedure, not a judicial procedure, but they make the decision whether to dismiss it or not. Okay, so if that happens, you have to on there then list the citation number, the reason for dismissal, and it's got to be a good one. And it must be routed through a lieutenant within the police department before it's sent into the parking office. So Lieutenant Bush right now is kind of running the day shift. So it'd probably be him unless it's on his days off. So anyway, he's there. He's in the lieutenant's office. We'll show you where the lieutenant's office is. I was working with him yesterday on the new radios. He was helping me. We had to send him back for new batteries. So great guy, loves the volunteers. He just absolutely loves it. So it's no real sweat. You just send it over to him. He'll make sure that everything looks good on it before you then turn it in. And you put it in the same basket and it goes over to the parking office. If you're in the middle of a citation, realize that it was issued in error or have changed your mind, write void on the top of the citation. We'll show you where you just kind of go right across the big letters across the top. Keep all copies and then turn all copies into the basket where you normally submit all your other citations. Any questions on that one? Okay. Citizens' questions about parking citations. Obviously, you get citizens' questions about them. They'll ask you questions about not just the ones they've gotten, but just in general. And they'll ask you, how do I fight? Got a parking ticket from the meter people. How do I fight this ticket? It's not fair. The meter wasn't working, whatever. So what you have to do is just explain to them that it's not first of all, it's not a criminal offense. This doesn't go in front of the municipal judge. It's a civil offense. So because of that, it doesn't issue warrants are not necessarily issued for these for simply parking violations. That does not apply, again, to vehicle registration violations or equipment violations. Those are vehicle code violations. Those are handled through the court system, okay? So if they don't comply with those, they can get a warrant issued against them. So just to understand that one, the parking situation, if you're writing for a red zone, for us, it's only a red zone or disabled parking. Those are handled through an administrative process. If it's for a California vehicle code well, actually, disabled parking actually is a vehicle code violation. I take it back. Those can get handled. The parking office usually tries to do them, particularly if they're going to invalidate them for some reason, which they can do. But if they're not going to do that, then it goes through the regular court system. Okay. Information about the process is on the reverse side of the citation. So all the questions they have should be answered. When you do the training, you'll get a copy of what's on the back of the citation. So you can have that, you keep it on your person or just read it and memorize it, and you'll understand what the rules and regs are for them handling it. So I would try to make it just simple. You don't have to learn that all here. And oh, I did. I said, note this only applies to parking situations. Okay. State and local laws have been established to set aside certain parking for people with disabilities that would otherwise have trouble walking long distances. That's the intent. So they're usually close to the opening of stores or locations where they would, want to go into a business location. All right. California Vehicle Code, which this is part of, can only be enforced on public land. That means any street is public land. City parking lots are public land. Private land is anything that's leaves from the curb, if you will, of your residence up through your front yard, your driveway before it hits the street is all private. In essence, the vehicle code laws do not apply there. I think there's only two, there's maybe three, I'm maybe forgetting one, that are vehicle codes. One is drunk driving on private property, reckless driving, endangerment kind of a thing is also on private property. And I think there's one more, but nothing that you would be enforcing. That's active driving, occupied vehicle. But so if it's an abandoned, or excuse me, if it doesn't have current registration on it, if it's got broken windows, if it's got bald tires, if it's got lacking a front or rear license plate, none of that applies if it's on private property. Parking lots are private property. So if you go to our Safeway that's here out on Mission Street, close to where I live, you go over to Trader Joe's and that huge parking lot in the back of that with CVS Pharmacy, all that's private property. The one exception is the disabled parking. You can write citations for violations on private property. The law requires that on private property, that if they have a certain number of customers, they have to have a certain number of these set aside parking spaces. So that's another violation. If the owners of the property don't post those, they're in violation. They can be taken to court and literally fined for not having them. So they have to have them, and there's a whole bunch of regulations around what they have to have, what size they have to be, the type of sign it has to be, how high off the ground, how wide the blue striping has to be. It cannot be over 2% incline grade of the asphalt. If it's over that, then that's a violation. It's crazy, the number of things they have to comply with, but that's their responsibility as an owner of private enterprise and have a parking lot where the public can come in. So we can write, and it's enforceable to write citations on private property. And that's for us, that just means all these parking lots that are out there associated with the business. Okay, or any of the city-owned parking lots that are out there, whether they're metered or not metered, it doesn't make any difference. If it's owned by the city, it's fair game. Okay. There's placards, we're going to be going over this. So how do you identify a vehicle that is currently have valid permission to use these disabled parking spots? If they have one of those things that they need to in order to give them permission to do that, legal permission, it also gives them some other nice rights. Besides being able to park in those spaces for an unlimited number of hours, they can park there as long as they want. They also have no time limits on parking meters. So if you were the parking control officers down there that are looking at these, one of the first things they have to do is make sure that this individual does not have a placard, it's called, that goes on their mirror in the front of the car, a license plate that shows that they're a disabled person. They even go so far as we'll be talking about, they have to look through the window to see if they see a placard laying there, which is not the right way to display it, but if they can even see it, they give them the pass on it. But they cannot be cited, they can stay at that meter all day long. There is no time limit on it. So they get free parking, basically. Any city, state of California, that applies to them. So they got that special privilege. There are also other ones, we won't even get into that because it's going to be, but there are some venues where vehicles are charged a parking fee. Not here. They can park in the lots free. Our city parking lots free. As long as they have that placard up, they don't have to pay. They don't even have to be within the disabled spot in our parking garages. If they park in a thing and they come back out, they don't have to pay. So it's that. Okay. These are issued to people with specific disabilities. And in order to get one of these, you have to have a very special form filled out, and a physician has to literally sign off on it. Then that's submitted to the Department of Motor Vehicles. And they are issued either a placard, which has a limited time on it, meaning it's good for, usually it's good for a couple of years. If it's a blue placard, well, I'll get into these. There's a red placard that's temporary. So if the physician says this is for 60 days, 90 days because you broke your leg and you're going to be in a cast for 6 weeks, that's fine. That's one way, and they will give you a red placard and it'll have a date on it when it's no longer good. If it's what we determine as a permanent disability, in essence, for us older people, that once you get Parkinson's, or if you're still driving if you have Parkinson's, but if you somehow have problems with immobility, you're in a wheelchair, those kinds of things, your disability is good forever. You're issued one that's good until, it'll say here, but I think it's June of every odd numbered year. So it gives you like 2 years grace period when you start. Sometimes it's only a couple of months. I'll take that back. And then they issue another one. It's good for 2 years, but that's the expiration date and it's printed on the placard. Then they give you another one. So it's good for a lifetime basically, but they're only good literally until they expire, and then another one is issued almost automatically. But in some cases, the doctors can come back and say the guy's been cured for whatever reason. We did some surgery on him, he no longer needs a wheelchair. Then that becomes invalid, and that's why they could continue to illegally use the blue one until the expiration date, but they're not getting a second one. All right, and I'll go into the plates in a minute. I'll save that. So those are kind of the descriptors of what gives a person a permission to park in these blue zones, these disabled parking zones. All right. The other plus, if you will, is obviously the placards can go to any vehicle out there. They are not associated with an individual vehicle. They are associated with the individual. That person has the right to take their placard and use it on any car they want. So if they've got their son driving them over there, if they can't drive themselves, they got their son driving them over there in the son's car, all they need is the placard. If they have a whatever, some company, or they rent a car, they do anything like that, that placard goes with them and they can hang it and it's good. So that's the advantage over having one on your car, because on your car, it's registered to the car, not to the individual. Okay. Well, I take that back. I guess it technically gets issued to an individual, but it's the individual who owns the car. So if somebody else is driving the car, they can get away with it. It's just, you're not going to question it. So that's that one. Yeah, it says that the registered owner of a special plate or a placard should be present in the vehicle when parking it in a disabled spot. That's true. But because of our non-confrontational policy, you'll see how we have to handle it, and it's basically just back away. We're not going to push it. An officer, if they want to do that, just say fine. They see some young kid getting out of the car and there's nobody else with them. They flip the placard up there, and they're stopped and questioned about it, and it's proved that they are not the owner of the placard. Then that is a violation. The person who owns the placard needs to be in the car legally. Okay. And that gets down here. Because of the benefits allowed to the owner of all plates and placards, their unauthorized use is prevalent. However, volunteers will not become involved in assessing their authorized use. Our focus is on vehicles without specialized plates or placards, plates or placards who park in these designated spaces. So we're simply looking for those folks that don't have any placards or plates and shouldn't be there. We take it even a step further in a few minutes. I'll show you what we do when we come into a situation where it's questionable. Okay, so we can write citations for them, both on the street and in private parking lots. And we just have to know that the space is properly marked. I'm going to be going in that in just a minute. And the other thing you have to know is there are two separate code violations for this. One is for parking on a public street. One is parking on a private property. So it's the same vehicle code number. It's just subsection A, subsection B. So you just have to indicate that on the citation. It'll cover from that. Okay. What we got here 302. We're going to just make it. To conform to the non-confrontational policy, volunteers will not issue citations to occupied vehicles parked in a disabled space that do not have an approved license plate or a placard. So if there is a person in the car, even though there is no placard, there is no plate, we're not going to cite them for it. And because we're not going to be confrontational, we're not even going to approach, knock on the window, roll it down and say, you know, you're not supposed to be parked here. We're just going to let it go. During the writing citation of a vehicle, if the owner or passenger return to the vehicle, then we're going to just, let me see, I just lost where I was on the screen. I'm sorry. Oh yeah, if you're about to write the citation or start to issue the citation, we treat it like the other ones. You just void it and take it back to the department. You just turn it in. You don't even have to explain why you void these. You just write void across them. It's only when you change the citation or make a mistake, that kind of stuff, where you've got to do something more than just say it's void and turn it in. All righty. So when can you issue these? These are the technical things. I'll let you read over them. Basically, we don't have to be experts on this, but there's a blue sign that's on a pole. It's 70 square meters, and it'll have the universal symbol of disabled, which is a stick figure of a human body in white on a blue background in a wheelchair. Okay, just real simple graphic. There's no detail to them at all. Also, either that symbol of the wheelchair must be painted on the ground inside the stall. That's technically correct, but at least the area has to be lined out in blue. There's an area next to it that's supposed to also be lined out blue and then cross hatching. That's to allow people to use a wheelchair to get out and have the space available for it. Anyway, you just have to assume that any of the ones you spot, as long as there's the blue sign and there's blue markings on the concrete, it's valid. They can argue out later that, well, it was 27 inches and not 30 inches, and therefore it wasn't valid. That's not for you to have to determine. Okay. All right. Since volunteers enforce the spirit of the law and not the letter of the law, you must fully examine the insides of the vehicle by looking through the windows to see if you can spot the handicap placard inside lying somewhere in the driver's or the passenger's thing. It's occasionally, you may see it on the seat, you might see it up in the center console, and that's fine. If you see one in there, that's okay. They didn't hang it up. We give them the benefit of the doubt. It's not the letter of the law, but the spirit of the law is they've got to have it. They've got it. Okay, we give them a break. So you have to definitely make sure that you do that. You look through the window. The camera function on your car or your cell phone, either your own. I mentioned you may not want to do that if it was taken in evidence. It is unlikely they would ever take in evidence for a parking violation, but it's a good practice, particularly on these specific kinds of violations where you get disabled. Take a photo of the rear license plate. Okay, if you can do it so that you can show the blue lines and the blue sign, perfect, and it shows that it's not a disabled parking permitted license plate. I take one also from the front of the car showing that there is no placard hanging from the rearview mirror. I'll also take one actually of the interior there showing that there's none laying on the seat. So I just do all three. That's not required, but it's the best way to do it. When you leave there, you also, if you're going to write up something about the citation on your own book, because there's nowhere in the citation book to write it. If you want to write a little commentary or something, just, you can just, you probably don't even have to do this because you know you've done it, but you could say no visible signs of anything like that. If you wanted to note something about the fact that you saw nobody around the car, whatever. But if you just want to make notes to yourself when you're away from the scene, that's fine. Don't do it right at the scene and expose yourself. but the photographs speak volumes. And if you're ever questioned and say, oh, that's BS, I didn't park there, there was no signage or whatever, you simply submit the photos. Then when it comes back, they'll ask you, fill out the questionnaire on why you issued the citation, et cetera. And you just submit the photos and it's a done deal at that point. All right. Yeah, many states have different kind of markings for disabled placards. Volunteers will honor out-of-state markings on disabled vehicles also. If the person has a if the person simply has a license plate that doesn't have it on it, has no placards, and it's an out-of-state license plate, to me, it's a flip of the coin. Whether you're going to write them, first of all, it's an out-of-state plate. So the chances of them ever paying the fine, something like that, is probably a zero anyway. It's one of those probably you're just going to have to walk away from and just say, okay, they're getting away with it. Or they may not even know about, that they're not supposed to park there. That's a bunch of BS, but anyway, it just saves you a bunch of time and effort. Yeah, you're going to get out there all the time. People are going to beat you. Yeah, you're going to get all upset because the SOB just got me and they shouldn't have. I'm right, they're wrong, but I'm going to have to walk away. So that's something, particularly in the police world, you're going to get used to. All righty. So that's it. Placards, like I said, we're going to go real quick here. They expire on June 30th. It's printed right on each and every one of them on the odd numbers of years. So right now, the ones you're going to see up there definitely, they'll all expire coming this June 2021. And they're all, all of those that are the blue ones. There are, and so they're good till the end of June. By then, they should have gotten new ones that they'll be hanging up that'll say 2023, June 30th, 2020. There are also red ones that are issued. That's the temporary ones I mentioned to you. They're good for just for up 160 days, 180 days, 6 months, or the date noted by the physician on the application, which would then be printed in indelible black ink by the Department of Motor Vehicles on the red ones. So if you see a red one, you can check, like I said, the expiration date on them. So they'll have 180 days. You have to worry about. All you have to just look at is what's the expiration date. But anyway, you know that now 180 days normally, or if it's a shorter duration, then whatever the physician signed for. Yeah, don't worry about if you're a non-resident, you can get a placard if you are disabled, and it's good in California. Again, if we're not citing out-of-state vehicles, you don't have to worry about it. I just wanted you to make aware that somebody can do that. License plates, again, they're issued to a particular person to a specific car. And that's fine. And they're good forever. Okay. Just a couple of things here to note. The parking placards or the plates allow them to park in the spaces I just mentioned, near blue curbs authorized for the handicap. Those are the ones that are on city streets. Next to a green curb, we don't have any of them here. On-street metered parking space at no charge, and in the areas indicated, it's required for a resident or a merchant's permit. If you know, here in Santa Cruz, if you live in certain areas, you got to get a permit that the city issues for a year for your particular area, or you can't park on the street. That's usually down close to the water. Okay, but anyway, they can park there, and you can't. They're not required to have the little stickers. So that's another one to remember, particularly if you spot one that's down on any of the streets that kind of lead into the West Cliff Drive or over on the East Cliff side. Okay, yeah, those that are marked with a crosshatch pattern next to the parking space, those spaces are for wheelchairs and that. They really can't park there. They're not supposed to. But here again, but I just want to be aware that that's a violation. If they didn't park within the two blue lines and they went over into the crosshatches, they're not supposed to do that. They cannot park in front of red zones, which is absolutely no parking anybody anytime. nor next to the yellow curbs. Yellow curbs are for commercial vehicles downtown. That's another one we don't cite for in the downtown area. It allows commercial vehicle plates to park there where they load passengers or unload supplies to the company, freight, that kind of thing. So they can't park in either yellow or red zones. Okay. And, they can't do it in white zones either. That's where, for loading and unloading passengers only. I think we've only got one white zone in the city. Okay, so here's your 2 citation CVC sections. The one, as I mentioned, is on street. That's 22. And this, in the way that radio handles these, usually it's 22507.8. That's how they kind of list it off. So 22507.8A. The brackets mean that's a subsection. That's for on-street. And the ones that you'll see most often off-street is the 22507 point B or 0.8B, subsection B. And that's the one that's in private parking spaces in shopping centers and that. Here's a couple examples of other ones that you can cite for. And like I said, you'll get your list make up your own list when we have the face-to-face. These are kind of the most common ones that we're called to enforce, are the ones you see most often. And the first one is red zones. So that's no parking anytime. We also encourage you not to park the patrol vehicles in red zones. You don't get cited for it, but they're there because usually there's a significant reason. The fire trucks can't get around a corner if there was somebody parked there, that it blocks the street in some way, all sorts of reasons, but it really means nobody can park there or it's going to cause a real problem or a hazard. So the red zone violation, as I mentioned, there's 2 ways to go on it. There's the CVC section 22500C or a municipal code section 10.40.040. Both of those have the exact same fine attached to them. So it's just up to you on which one you want to cite them for. And the fire hydrants, another one. Obviously, it's important to keep our fire hydrants available for fire personnel. Normally, the fire hydrants in Santa Cruz will have red zones both in front and back of them, showing that it's no parking. So it's both a red zone violation as well as a fire hydrant violation. But the fire hydrant violation is a lot more expensive. So if you write for that one, it's going to cost them a fair amount more. You'll also get one, your cheat sheet shows the finding on it. You'll see the difference. Also, it states that if there is no, the vehicle code states if there is no red zone around it, they still cannot park within 15 feet of a fire hydrant, except as follows. And that means that literally it basically says somebody needs to be in the driver's seat with a driver's license, able to drive your way. But for us, if there's anybody in the vehicle at all, okay, you're not going to cite them for it. And the second one is just for fire department personnel, which we don't get, you won't get involved in. So I'm just saying, if it's an unoccupied vehicle, cite it. If it's an occupied vehicle, it falls back to that we don't cite people in unoccupied or in occupied vehicles. Okay. So that's the one on the red zones. Okay, and that one is on both sides. I think when I printed it out, I made an error there. So those are examples of some of the parking violations. I'm just wondering here. Yep, I'm okay. So that's parking violations. Then we do vehicle license plate, which I said you're going to do a lot more of. That has to do with the registration issues. And we also do, I think I made a mistake. Fire hydrant. I did. So it's out of order is all. If you turn over to equipment violations, or maybe it's not out of order. I'm sorry. Just looking at what I did, and I thought I'd screwed you guys over on the sections on this, that everything wasn't here, but that it is. Okay, vehicle equipment citation, sorry. Unoccupied vehicles, again, city streets, not private parking lots, city streets. You can go ahead and cite for all sorts of equipment violations. And there's lots of them. They're commonly referred to as fix-it tickets. It means that they have to be corrected and then signed off and then submitted with a smaller fine than if they don't correct them. Okay. For your information on these kinds of tickets, there's two types of sign-offs that they have to complete if you're asked this question. If the violation is for a broken lamp, either a front headlamp or a stop lamp, a stop light in the back, or a tail light, that kind of a thing, those have to be fixed, or excuse me, and brakes. If it's a brake violation, we don't get involved. Those are exhausted. No. They have to be corrected by an authorized dealership or an authorized repair shop. Authorized means they have a state license to do these and sign off citations. So if they have broken lamps, the only ones we're concerned about, they have to go to an authorized inspection station or installation station or a repair shop or a garage that has permission to sign off, actually have it corrected, and then have the police officer sign it off, or excuse me, yeah, and then it must be signed off after they've certified on it. On the copy, there's a place that they have to fill in their certification. Then an officer also then has to sign off on the bottom of it, okay? So they sign off on the top, this the authorized fix-it shop, and the officer then signs it off on the bottom. If it isn't one of those citations, any of the other ones I'm going to be talking about has to be signed off by a police officer. Now, we're trying to find out if we're going to be able to sign off on those, but right now we still can't. We're working on it. If the penalty is set at 2 levels, if the owner/driver of the vehicle makes the required repairs and has it certified within 21 days, that's how long they've got. So if you're ever asked from the date of the issuance, you have 21 days to fix it. Then the current fine is $10, and that must be delivered either in person to the Santa Cruz parking office located on Locust Street there, or mailed to them. Their hours, excuse me, right now are from 10 to 5. I thought it was 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. And there's another number here if they want to talk to them about paying it in another way, and that's the 420-6100 number. If they fail to correct within 21 days, that adds an additional fine on top of the $10. Almost all of those are $66, so the full ticket becomes $76. They have to pay both the $10 that they would have gotten away with plus the whole extra fine. So 21 days, if it goes beyond that, they owe double, or they owe for both of the fines. Just a couple of the sections that apply to this. Left side driver mirrors are required. Actually, both, you'll learn this, but both sides are required. If they can't see through the back, if they've got a rear view mirror that classifies as one, depending on the age of the car, it gets real kind of complicated. But the ones you're most likely to run into and the ones that are most dangerous and why we focus on them is driver side mirrors. Often these are the ones that are dangling by a cord because they've been knocked off and the remote control unit is still attached. They're completely fractured, so there's no ability for them to use that to see easily into the rear. I mean, if it's completely spider web, something like that. If it's got one little single crack, no, you can still see to the back. That gets picky uni. It's where really it's meant to say that it's no longer operable. It can't be used as a mirror. So that's one. That's the 26709 for CVC violation. Again, the next one is a non-functioning stop lamp. If you see the broken out is often the case. The bulb is often broken out too. It's shattered. So all you're seeing is a white light in that direction. That's also citable. Those are just a couple of examples. All right, moving right along. License plate and registration. So that's the third category. Equipment violations, parking violations, license plate and registration. Citation can be issued for a missing front plate. In California, it is required, if you're issued 2 plates, and all vehicles are issued 2 plates, except motorcycles, they are required to go ahead and have that onto the front, screwed into the front somehow or another. Some of the automobiles make it very difficult. I think Teslas and things like that. Some manufacturers make that hard because in many states, they don't have to have a front license plate. They have to here. A lot of that has to do with these, the fact that these fast track lanes and things, when you get into them, they take a photograph of your license plate and then they bill you for it. So anyway, it is required to have a front license plate. So if they don't have a front license plate, that's a violation. They also obviously have to have a rear license plate. It has to be readable. If the license plate frame hides part of the license number, that's a violation. If they gray it out, I try not to, sometimes use gray, kind of spray paint or something. They do that because apparently the cameras can't record those in the fast track lane. That's something I just learned about a month and a half ago. But anyway, they're not supposed to alter the plate in any way. They're not supposed to put a thing coming. They're not supposed to put if it's a clear plastic shield over it, no problem. But if it's highly tinted, so basically I can't even read what the hell it says under there, that's a violation. So the simple ones here I just had was missing a front plate is California Vehicle Code again, 5201 and 5204 is an improper rear plate. Normally on that one, there's separate ones. Like I say, if it's blocking the visualization of the plate, there's a different section number for that. This one is strictly for the tabs. On California plates, you've got a year tab on the left-hand side and a month tab on the right-hand side. The license registration is valid if it's in the correct year and the end of the month indicated on the month sticker has not yet occurred. So if it's if it's a yellow one right now, which is 2019, am I correct on that? 2020, I guess 21 is, 21 is yellow, or 2000 is yellow. If it's a 2000 in yellow and it doesn't expire, or it expires in November, it's still totally valid. December, still totally valid. Other than that, they're supposed to have a red one on there, which indicates that it's now registered for 2021, and the month would be the same as before. So normally they don't send you new monthly stickers. They only send the year sticker. So the month stays permanent, the sticker, the year one gets stickered over, or scraped off, and a new one applied. So theoretically, if you run into one out there that's got a yellow sticker, 2020, and a one that says October, it's theoretically now in violation. What you're going to hear me talk about is discretion. For a while, they even rescinded, or they asked us not to hand out any of these that go out of registration during the coronavirus situation. All right. So we weren't issuing them if it was something that was due, sometime between like March when that thing first hit and currently, don't cite them, give them a pass. Just before we came online here, I got sent the memo from the police department saying, we're back in business, if you will. You can now start citing again. The DMV has authorized, because they have been back in full operations now for like 2 to 3 months or 4 months, they are no longer restricting us from citing. But now it's open games again. So we're now open to cite. I personally have a thing that just says, I'll give them like 2 months, because sometimes they won't pay it until the last day of November. And it takes, 2 or 3 weeks to get the DMV to send it back to you. If you don't do it online, if you mail in your payment, and 2, 3, 4 weeks can go by. I'll give them 2 full months and not cite them for that. During the coronavirus, I was saying, geez, give them 3, because it's still maybe problematic, you might give them 3 months. Beyond that, I think it's fair game. Not often. The last couple I gave out, I think one of them was out of date by 2 years. They had a 2018 sticker on there. So yeah, that's just crazy. So you can cite for not having the current registration. It's up to you on how much slack you want to give them. I'm saying it's probably wise, and most of the police officers give them slack in there of at least a couple of months. All right, you'll have no problem if you want to cite for that stuff. You'll be citing all day long. Okay, we have had complaints about this. There was one sent in complaining about the volunteers putting these on cars up in the neighborhoods, and people saying, don't they have better things to do, and cite cars for not having current registrations when they're parked in front of a person's house, and they were sent back a thing saying, no, you're in violation. If you're going to park it on the street, it has to be registered, okay? And it's already 3 months out of registration. So they kind of just blew it off when it came in as a nasty gram to the chief. All right. Any questions? It's a whole lot to absorb. All I can do is say, go back. I don't expect you to memorize all these code sections. The cheat sheet will help. You can write them on the outside flap of your citation book. That's what I do because I don't have them memorized. And we'll be talking about a whole lot of other ones. Not if you really want to get picky-uni, if you will, not parking within 18 inches of the curb. Not if you're on any of the hills, and there's plenty of them on the west side here going up into the other side of Mission Street when you're going up towards the UC campus. They don't curb their wheels so that they're blocked against the curb when they're parked on an incline. It's almost endless. Ball tires, they have to have so much curb, 18 inches to the curb. No front bumper is a violation. No rear bumper is a violation. You'll see them all. But anyway, that's all the things that are available if you want to get involved in it heavily. We did have one officer here. He's left the department now. He was from LA originally. He had the vehicle code totally memorized, and he'd go out and just park the wrong way on a street. Residential streets where, if you're on the right-hand side, you're supposed to, you're driving on the right-hand side, you got to park on the right. If you park so that you're facing oncoming traffic, that's a violation. You'd cite for those. So it just depends on kind of your personality. And again, we don't want to use these as vindictive. We don't want to use them as just being nasty to people that are out there. It really is something that says the entire state of California is subsidized by taxes. You may not like them, and fees. If I own a business, I got all sorts of things I got to pay. And the polls, we just had a bunch of stuff on the last voting on our ballots that talked about fees and registrations and things like that, and whether we wanted to have those still applicable. So those are just the laws. The people have voted on them. They've been approved, or the legislature has approved them. So all we're doing is just following what the legislation has asked us to do. And, if you don't feel like doing that, fine, you don't have to. You're not obligated. All right. Any questions?
So let's say back to the fire hydrant parking.
Yeah.
Let's say there's no red zone. They're just parked at a fire hydrant.
Yeah.
And because the fire hydrant parking ticket is so expensive,
Yep.
would you
It's
be
like
able to
$50.
cite them?
Maybe it's more than that, 50 or 60 bucks.
Would you be able to cite them for a red zone instead of a fire hydrant just to make it easier on them?
It's up to you.
Okay.
Here's my thought on that. The problem is the reason I think most of the places you're going to find, is the red zone. The reason they put the red zone there is obviously if the hook and ladder truck, if the fire truck pulls up, they've got to be able to hook into that. So if the space is large enough, then they can actually pull the truck right up next to it. If they can't, they have to park outside, but they have to have enough clearance to get the hoses and all that stuff out and around and then make their connection to the hydrant. Because these trucks only carry so much water and they rely on the fire hydrants to give them their unending source. So I just look at the intent. I don't want the fire department to have a problem if they end up having to hook up here. That's the whole thing. So if they're far enough back and and they're in the red zone, but it's not really hampering kind of the access to it, yeah, I would say that that's perfectly reasonable on your part. If in fact they're blocking the hydrant, then yeah, they get the full money. That's a bad one. I can't think of an excuse on why somebody would park there and think that that wasn't a problem.
Yeah.
Jesus, kind of crazy. They're supposed to know the vehicle code, at least the major sections of it, when you take your driver's test. And that's a big one. You don't park in there. You don't hamper ambulances. You get out of the way when you hear a siren. You don't sit there and block the roadway. So it's those kinds of safety issues that kind of get my goat, or if you will, or I don't have any problem, with those kinds of violations. I understand people screw up all the time, and I'm very forgiving, and that's fine. So, any other questions? Okay, the practice session will be a good one for you, and I think it'll cement it in. And when you get on the street, you actually get to write one or two. They'll become comfortable for you, and then you can put your book away and never use it, or not even take one, not even take a citation book. Any other questions? Like the other class, or not like the other class, this one there is a quiz, so I'll be sending it out because there's just lots of stuff that I think was important. And it's just another way of letting me know, yeah, you got it, and we can move ahead. And if you didn't, fine. We'll just go back and we'll cover them again to make sure you feel comfortable with them. All right, folks. Next Tuesday, everybody know where the community room is? It's probably where you did your interviews, would be my guess, but maybe not. We have the little interview rooms, I know, off to the lobby. And all right, so we're in the big community room right down there in the front of the police department, basically attached to it. And we'll start very promptly at 2 o'clock. So if you can get there, 5-10 minutes early, that'd be great. The door will probably be locked. Just knock on it or that, or maybe I might have somebody standing out in front, or I might even block it open because there's so few of us. But that's it. We'll be doing the radios again, give you some actual practice time on them, and we'll give you some time on practicing citation writing. So it should be a little more fun. And after that, we'll talk about the getting out of the shadowing phase. Has everybody done the shadowing? Bailey, have you been able to get out yet and do a shadow?
No, not yet, but I'm going to have some days off coming up, and I'm going to try and get one then.
Oh, that'd be sweet. Okay, yeah, if you could do that, any team that you see going out there is just fine. Grab it, and you'll just get a sense, and that makes you sure that probably you don't need it, but just to be sure that, yeah, this looks like something that will work for me.
Yeah, for sure.
People who have done that, and 2/3 of the way through the academy, to say, whoops, wait a minute. That's not exactly, I guess I failed to realize that I'll be dealing with street people as much as I am, or things like that. Kind of said, maybe next time, but not now. So, and that's perfectly fine. I hate to see it, but, and again, you it's a threesome, I don't think you're going to have a problem with that, unless it changes your whole idea about going into law enforcement, which could happen. That could happen. So, yeah, it's a reality. Okay, anything else? Super. Okay, have a great rest of the week. I'll send out the, see if I can get to it in the next few minutes here. I'll send out the quiz for you, give you plenty of time to get it back in. If you haven't given me all your quizzes yet, please do. That'd be the last thing I think any of you have to do. Yeah, Myra had some other things she needed to get in, but anyway, we'll see where that goes. Okie dokie. So congratulations, folks. You got through Zoom Training Academy. That's pretty spectacular. Not the easiest way to pull this stuff off. So you've been terrific, really. Your answer's been basically almost spot on in every case. And if not, I certainly understand why you might miss one, because sometimes maybe logic or whatever doesn't necessarily fit, or just the way it's written can mess you up. So no problem on any of you for any of the ones that got, and I try to get back to you kind of to explain it so that it feels comfortable to you. It makes sense. That's this whole job. It's just trying to make sense out of it. So, okay, big step. One more next week with the in-face. Now, one more after that on the 10 hours of patrol time out there. And at the same time, too, while you're doing that, if I mentioned it one last time, we will, or if you get out with me the first time, I'll make sure that besides doing the walking patrol, that I give you enough introduction to the vehicle that you feel, that you can drive it. And if any of you have not gotten in a copy of your certified driving record, from the DMV. Do you know about that? Was that all explained to you? If you haven't done that, I think it's a $5 thing. You can either do it by going to the DMV yourselves or mailing it in, and then they send you a copy. But you need to turn that in because that's what the city needs to show that you have an acceptable record per se, and that they're going to indemnify you to drive a police car and assume the liability factors involved with it. So that's what it's all about. So please do that so that we can get you out there, put you behind the wheel. If you want to drive, again, if you don't want to drive, we have at least 2 or 3 people. We have one that doesn't have a driver's license. So we have folks out there who don't want to drive. If they want to be passenger, that's fine too. But I want to give you at least the chance, if you want to sign up so that you get through that little mini course. It's very short, but and then we let you drive the car a little bit to get comfortable with you. Probably what we'll do, we can't let you drive the car out in public until you have a uniform on. If we're not in uniform, we have to put out of service up and stuff like that. But anyway, we'll you're right after you get your badge number and stuff, we get you your uniform, and then we'll put you back out and let you drive it around and feel comfortable. We'll get you real comfortable with everything short of that in the parking garage. I'll get you signed off, and that'll be it. Okay, I run over. Take care. See you next Tuesday.
Thank you, Jim.
Face to face or mask to mask.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Have a good week.
Will do.